Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're diving into a question I'm sure many of you have pondered. How often should couples be going on date nights? Once a week? Twice a month? Is there some kind of secret formula out there?
That's what makes this topic so interesting. The research actually suggests there's no magic number.
Really? So no hard and fast rules?
Nope. Every couple's different. Their needs are different. Their schedules are different. Their preferences are different. What matters most is finding what works for you.
Okay, so no magic number. Got it. But I'm assuming there's still some helpful insights we can glean from the research to help couples figure out their own ideal date night frequency, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of great information out there about the benefits of date nights, the challenges, and most importantly, how to approach this whole thing in a way that strengthens your connection rather than creating more stress.
Sounds good to me. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's define what we actually mean by date night. What exactly are we talking about here?
Right. Well, our sources define date night as any planned activity, and I think the key word there is planned.
So not just randomly ending up on the couch together after a long day?
Exactly. It's about intentionally setting aside time, specifically for the two of you to connect, away from all the everyday distractions and responsibilities.
Got it. So it's about being intentional, creating that dedicated space for the relationship.
Exactly. And when you think about it that way, it really highlights why date nights are considered so beneficial, especially in today's busy world.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Life gets hectic, schedules get packed, and it's easy to let those moments of connection slip away.
It really is. And there's actually a psychological theory called the drift apart phenomenon that describes this.
Drift apart.
Yeah, basically, the idea is that couples can gradually drift apart over time, not because they don't care about each other, but simply because life gets in the way.
Jobs, kids, errands, all that stuff.
Exactly. All those demands can slowly erode the foundation of the relationship if couples aren't actively working to maintain their connection.
So in a way, regular date nights are like a counterforce to that drift. They're a way to ensure you're still investing in the relationship, even when life feels chaotic.
That's a great way to put it. It's like a relationship insurance policy.
Yeah.
And it's not just about preventing drift. Date nights can also be incredibly powerful for strengthening that emotional connection between partners.
How so?
Well, think about it. When you're out together, away from the distractions of home, you're naturally more present with each other. You have the space to have deeper conversations, share experiences, really focus on building that intimacy.
So you're not just physically together, you're emotionally present as well.
Right. And all those shared experiences, whether it's trying a new restaurant, exploring a park, or just having a good laugh over coffee, those become part of your shared history as a couple.
I like that, building a memory bank of moments that are unique to your relationship.
Exactly. And those memories become touchstones that you can look back on and draw strength from, especially when times get tough. They remind you of why you're together, why you chose each other in the first place.
And it doesn't have to be anything fancy, right? Sometimes the simplest dates can be the most meaningful.
Absolutely. It's not about checking off some list of extravagant date ideas. It's about the quality of the time you spend together, no matter what you're doing.
Okay, so we've talked about how date nights can help prevent drift. They can strengthen emotional connection, build shared memories. Anything else? Any other benefits we should be aware of?
Well, what's interesting is date nights can actually help rekindle that spark, that initial excitement you felt when you first started dating.
I'm listening. Tell me more.
Well, as relationships mature, it's natural to fall into routines, right?
Absolutely.
And routines are great for some things, but when it comes to romance, they can lead to boredom and predictability.
So date nights are a way to break out of that rut, inject some novelty back into the relationship.
Exactly. And there's actually a neurological basis for this. Research shows that novel experiences, especially when shared with a loved one, trigger the release of dopamine in the brain.
Dopamine, the feel-good hormone.
The very same. So basically, stepping outside your comfort zone on date nights can actually give your relationship a chemical boost.
Wow, so it's like a shot of dopamine for your relationship, helping to rekindle those feelings of excitement and attraction. I love it. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Date nights as a way to prevent drift, to strengthen emotional connection, to build shared memories, and to even boost those feel-good hormones. But let's be real. Date nights take effort. They take planning. And sometimes, with our crazy schedules, they can feel like just another thing to add to the to-do list.
You bring up a really important point, and that's actually what we're going to explore next, the other side of the coin.
Oh, you mean the arguments for why less frequent dates might actually be better for some couples?
Exactly, because let's be honest, a Wintley candle at dinner isn't always realistic or even desirable for everyone.
I'm intrigued. Let's dig into that.
Let's do it. So, before the break, we were talking about all those great reasons to prioritize date night.
All those benefits you were describing,
Yeah.
preventing drift, deepening connection, boosting those feel-good hormones.
Exactly. But, as with most things in life, there's always another side to the story.
The other side of the date night coin.
You got it. And that other side is all about recognizing that maybe, just maybe, the whole date night every week model isn't the best fit for everyone.
Okay, I'm curious. Why not? What are some reasons why couples might want to reconsider that weekly date night ritual?
Well, for starters, let's talk about life stages. Think about couples with really demanding jobs, or those juggling young children, or maybe even both.
Yeah, those are definitely some intense life stages.
They really are. And for those couples, trying to squeeze in a formal date night every week, on top of everything else they're dealing with,
It could actually backfire.
it could. It might create more stress than enjoyment. They might end up feeling resentful or overwhelmed, or even like they're failing at this whole date night thing.
So what's the alternative? Are those couples just doomed to drift apart?
Not at all. There's another way to approach this whole idea of quality time, and that's where the concept of spontaneous quality time comes in.
Spontaneous quality time. I like the sound of that. Tell me more.
It's all about recognizing that connection doesn't have to be confined to those formal, scheduled date nights.
It can happen in those everyday moments.
Exactly. And for some couples, those little moments of connection that happen organically throughout the day, those can actually feel more authentic, more meaningful than a planned date.
I can see that. It's about being present in the moment, even amidst the chaos of daily life. But what would that look like in practice? Can you give me some examples?
Of course.
Yeah.
Imagine you're both rushing around in the morning, trying to get the kids ready for school, get yourselves ready for work. Instead of just going through the motions, you take a moment to share a cup of coffee together, make eye contact, really connect, even if it's just for 5 minutes.
It's about stealing those little moments of connection whenever you can.
Exactly. Or maybe it's after a long day, you're both exhausted, the dishes are piled up, but instead of zoning out in front of the TV, you put on some music, have a dance party in the kitchen.
Just let loose and have some fun together.
Precisely. And sometimes those spontaneous moments of joy and connection can be even more powerful than a planned date night.
Because they're unexpected, they catch you off guard.
Exactly. And they remind you that connection can happen anywhere, anytime, as long as you're both open to it.
Okay, so we've talked about life stages, the power of spontaneous connection. Any other reasons why couples might choose to dial back on the frequency of their formal date nights?
Well, for some couples, especially those who've been together for a long time, that initial urgency for frequent date nights might naturally fade.
Because they've already built a strong foundation of trust and intimacy.
Exactly. They feel secure in their connection. They find comfort and joy in the familiar rhythm of their shared lives. They don't necessarily need those constant reminders of why they're together.
So the need for those formalized date nights might lessen over time, which makes sense.
It does. And let's be honest, frequent date nights can put a strain on the budget.
That's true, especially if you're always going out to fancy restaurants or doing expensive activities.
Exactly. But the good news is you don't have to break the bank to prioritize connection. Some of the most meaningful dates are the ones that cost little to no money.
So it's about getting creative.
Exactly. Instead of focusing on the what, focus on the who. What truly matters is that you're spending quality time together, regardless of the activity.
I'm thinking picnics in the park, movie nights at home, exploring a new hiking trail.
Those are all great examples, and sometimes those low-key, budget-friendly dates can be even more intimate and relaxing than a more formal outing. There's less pressure, you can just be yourselves.
So to recap, we've talked about life stages, the power of spontaneous quality time, the natural evolution of relationship needs, and the importance of finding budget-friendly options. With all these different perspectives, how do couples navigate this whole date night dilemma? How do they figure out what truly works best for them?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think the answer lies in communication. Open, honest, and heartfelt communication.
About their needs, their desires, their expectations around date nights.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to dive into next, how to have those conversations in a way that strengthens your connection rather than creating conflict.
Sounds good to me. Let's do it. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground in our exploration of date nights, the benefits, the challenges, the different perspectives, and it seems like the key takeaway here is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Absolutely. It's all about finding what works for you as a couple. And that starts with communication.
Talking to each other, figuring out what you both want and need from your date nights.
Exactly. But it's not just about talking, it's about how you talk. These conversations can be tricky, especially if you have different expectations or if you're feeling resentful or disconnected.
So how do we navigate these conversations in a way that's productive and actually brings you closer together, rather than creating more distance?
Well, I think the first step is to choose the right time and place.
Set the stage for a successful conversation.
Right. Don't try to have this conversation when you're both exhausted after a long day or when you're in the middle of cooking dinner. Find a time when you can both relax, put away your phones, and really focus on each other.
Maybe light some candles, pour a glass of wine, create a little ambiance.
Exactly. Make it feel special, like a date night in itself. And remember, approach the conversation with curiosity and empathy, not judgment.
Try to see things from your partner's perspective, even if you don't fully agree with it.
Yes. And start by expressing your own needs and desires in a way that feels vulnerable and honest, not accusatory or demanding.
So instead of saying, "You never take me out anymore," you could say something like, "I've been feeling a little disconnected lately, and I'd really love to find more ways to spend quality time together."
That's a great example. It's about expressing your needs without placing blame. And then, when it's your partner's turn to share, listen. Really listen. Don't interrupt. Don't get defensive. Just try to understand where they're coming from.
It's about creating a safe space where you both feel heard and validated. And once you've both had a chance to express yourselves, you can start brainstorming solutions together.
Maybe you compromise on a weekly at-home date night, or maybe you decide to alternate between planned dates and more spontaneous moments of connection throughout the week. The key is to find a balance that feels good for both of you.
And to be willing to adjust that balance as your needs and circumstances change over time.
Exactly. Relationships are constantly evolving, so your approach to date nights might need to evolve as well.
Flexibility is key.
It really is. And one of the most common pitfalls I see couples fall into is getting stuck in a date night rut. They do the same thing week after week, and it starts to feel more like an obligation than something they genuinely look forward to.
So how do we keep date nights feeling fresh and exciting, even after years of being together?
That's where creativity comes in. Think outside the box. Instead of the usual dinner and a movie, why not try a cooking class together, or go on a hike, or visit a local museum?
Ooh. Or even something silly and spontaneous like going to an arcade or playing mini golf.
I love it. It's about tapping into that sense of playfulness, remembering that date nights are supposed to be fun. And, don't be afraid to switch things up. If you always go out, try staying in for a change. If you always plan elaborate dates, embrace the simplicity of a cozy night at home.
It's about breaking free from those rigid expectations and finding what truly sparks joy for both of you.
And speaking of finding what sparks joy, I'd love to leave you with a thought-provoking question to ponder. If you could design your ideal date night, the one that truly maximized connection, fun, and intimacy, what would it look like?
What a great question. I encourage all of you listening to reflect on that, to have a conversation with your partner and start creating those magical moments together.
Remember, it's not about following some arbitrary rule book. It's about making a conscious choice to invest in your relationship, to nourish that connection.
Because ultimately, that's what matters most.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of date nights. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even a little inspiring.
Remember, the most important thing is to keep those conversations flowing and keep prioritizing that connection with your partner.
We'll catch you next time for another fascinating deep dive into the world around us.